What is up, people? Miles here with Keep the Change. And today we are talking about an extremely hot growth stock, Draftkings stock. It's a gambling stock, mainly sports gambling online. We're going to be talking about whether or not it's overvalued, undervalued, and whether or not you should buy it. So if you like the video and you want to see more like it, go ahead and hit that like button and also subscribe as well so you never miss an upload from me. I upload every Tuesday and every Friday. And if you don't like and subscribe, then this puppy is going to die, okay? It's in your hands, so you better do it. Now, I've talked about another gambling stock before, GAN stock, so if you want to watch that video, go right ahead. And if I'm being honest, I think it's a better deal than Draftkings, so don't tell anyone I said that, okay? But as for Draftkings, the stock IPO'd back in 2019, but it really started gaining traction this year. The share price was around $10 back then, now it's around $60. So it's basically gone up 500% in a matter of a year, which is absolutely ridiculous. 500%, I mean, that's Tesla numbers. That's crazy. It's got a market cap around $22 billion, so it's not a small company by any means. It also has $1.2 billion in cash just on the balance sheet alone with no debt. Now, that's something I really like seeing in a company. I like my stocks to have a lot of cash on hand and not a lot of debt, so that's good for me. So it's a company in the gambling industry, and mainly the online gambling industry, as they design apps for your phone. Now, DraftKings' main focus and the majority of their revenue comes from sports betting online. Gambling online in general is sort of a new industry, a new trend, and it's expected to pick up here in the next decade. Only a few states have legalized it at this moment, but more are expected to in the coming years, with DraftKings stating that online sports betting and online internet real money gaming, which is like casino apps, is expected to reach $40 billion by the end of 2025, which is crazy. How does DraftKings fit into this piece of the puzzle? Well, their two biggest apps are to do with sports. So a fantasy league app with your friends, Fantasy Sports, a sports betting app where you can just bet straight on games, and then also a casino app, which is kind of their least priority at the moment. Their sports apps are really their main two. So obviously their biggest focus being sports. The pandemic probably didn't help with that. You know, a lot of sports games are being canceled right now. You can't watch nearly as many. However, there's a lot of pent-up demand as sports are not here right now, but when they come back and stronger than ever, basically a bunch of gamblers are going to go crazy, right? They haven't been able to gamble for months, and now all of a sudden they can. Now, how DraftKings actually makes money is if you're in a fantasy league with your friends, you pay an entrance fee. So if I want to do a round with my friends or whatever, I pay $1. 1 to 5, minuscule amounts that just adds up over time as more people play and more people spend money. And on the sports betting and the casino apps, obviously they make the money on the difference between the amount that people pay them and the amount that they pay out to the customer. So if a customer gives them $100 on a casino app or a sports betting app and they win back 20, obviously they keep the change. I get it? No? Okay. It's a pretty simple business model to understand. Basically, the more people that use their apps, the more people spending money on it, and the more money they get to keep in their own pocket. So the three major apps that they have are actually extremely well received, each having around 4.8 out of 5 stars in the App Store, which is very high. So DraftKings, the company, they started off in 2012, and in 2013, they released their first fantasy league app. So at this point back in 2013, sports gambling wasn't really legal yet. However, there was a loophole that you could technically do fantasy league gambling because fantasy was skill. It wasn't luck. However, in 2017, that all changed when the Fire Nation attacked, and the government overturned the ban on online gambling with sports. So federally, at the federal level, it was no longer illegal, and now it's just up to the states to slowly legalize it. So by 2018, DraftKings had launched a sports betting app in New Jersey, one of the very first sports betting markets that they could go into. And in 2019, they started launching their own casino apps as well, which we'll get more into that later. Now, the user base growth for this company, to me, is a little disappointing. So in 2013, they had around 100,000 registered accounts with all of their services, which basically at the time was the Fantasy League app. And by the end of 2019, they had 12 million. So that's a really good growth rate over those 6 years, you know? But if you look at it, it kind of grew stagnant by 2016, and they haven't really had as much growth as they could have, in my opinion. However, this is still early in the market, and as it develops, they should be able to grow their clientele and their customer base even more, hopefully. For a high growth company like this, I would want to see higher growth in their users. However, they are basically the number one in terms of sports betting. You can see that from where they rank in the App Store, along with the fact that DraftKings actually has a partnership with the NFL. They're the number one fantasy league app for the NFL. Now, this is really good news, obviously. That's connections you want to have in the sports gambling industry. On top of that, they have a bunch of different agreements with individual sports teams as well, with a bunch bunch of football teams, baseball teams, you name it. And also something that's really interesting to take note of, just kind of a cool thing, they have Michael Jordan on the board of directors. So Michael Jordan is directly involved with this company, which is weird, okay? We're balling now, we're balling. Now, obviously, that's just very good for the brand. Michael Jordan, pretty much if you think of sports, he's probably gonna come to mind. Him and Kobe. Rest in peace. So this just confirms that people who have expertise within the sports industry trust Draftkings as a service and an app. And the strongest thing about this company, in my opinion, is their brand and their recognition. They are the #1 rated daily fantasy sports and sportsbooks platform. And if we look at this chart here, it actually shows you that Draftkings is pretty much in the lead in terms of people knowing who they are and trusting. So really their only competitor is FanDuel, but they're obviously second to them. Now only 14 states have legalized online sports betting at the moment. However, there's only 9 that they can actually go into and operate in currently. The other ones will open up slowly. DraftKings' claim is that once all states open up around the US, that they can make around $3 to $5 billion in revenue every year. And they currently make around $550 million a year. So that would actually quadruple their revenue, which is extremely good growth. And another thing I will say that I like about this company is the fact that they have so many users, they have a lot of data. If you think about it, this is what makes tech companies so highly valued, right? Facebook, Google, the list goes on. So DraftKings has a bunch of data on different people, on how they like to bet, on how they like to play. So if I'm on my phone one day and I'm just a gambling degenerate lad and I'm just going around my business, they'll send me a little pop-up notification specifically for bets that I would be inclined to make. So the fact that they have this much data, they can really do targeted notifications and get you to spend more money on their app. Also, the fact that the brand is so well recognized is kind of a sticky ecosystem, meaning that if I use the DraftKings sportsbook betting, I am very likely to use the DraftKings casino betting and vice versa. And the fact that they're the leader just shows that they're already having their foot in the door. I mean, this is basically like investing in Netflix like 10 years ago. Not quite the equivalent, but in terms of the fact that they're just so far ahead of the competition. So let's go over the positives one more time. This is a massively growing company. They should be able to grow revenues for at least 30% a year for the next 10 years, hopefully. They're a leader in their respective industry with a lot of reputation, and they have a brand name which is highly valued. That's really good. Also, the fact that they have a really good balance sheet, $1.2 billion in cash, so they're not going to go bankrupt anytime soon. However, they are losing money at the moment. They're unprofitable, and we'll get into that in a second because we're going to talk about the cons here, okay? It's not all just pros, there's some cons. So let's address the risks or the bad things with this company. First off, they're heavily reliant on sport betting. Now, this isn't really a bad thing in the longer term. However, in the short term, this could really impact them. The revenues were actually down this quarter year over year, not insanely, only a couple percent. However, that's not something you want to see in a growing company. But this was to be expected as sports were canceled due to the pandemic. And even though the NFL season is starting now, that doesn't mean that they're going to go through till the end of the season. People could get infected, pandemic outbreaks could occur. If you look at it, an NFL team already tested positive, so they could shut down sports again. Now, this would send DraftKings stock down massively, okay? This stock is up, what, 500%? Basically priced to perfection in terms that sports are going to go extremely well this year. So if they do end up shutting down sports, that would hurt the stock price massively. The second thing to address with this company is the fact that they're reliant on regulation. And what I mean by this is they really need all states to legalize online sports gambling in order to get this company to its full potential in terms of revenue, profitability, all that good stuff. If it takes longer than they expect for it to get legal all around the country, that would obviously hurt the share price as well. Now, personally, I'm very bullish on the fact that this will open up across the country probably by the end of the decade, if not sooner. However, that's just something to keep in mind because, hey, the government loves money. I don't see why they wouldn't tax this and take money from it. It just doesn't make sense. Now, let's talk about my absolute biggest gripe with this company by far, the valuation and the profitability. So this company is not profitable at all, which personally I hate about a company, okay? Now, DraftKings claims that they can actually turn a profit within the next 2 to 3 years. However, they just have to invest so much into sales and marketing at the moment, it kind of weighs them down. However, I've seen a lot of growth stocks say, oh, we'll be profitable one day, don't you worry about it, and it never happens. So that's something to keep in mind. If they can't deliver on profitability, then they're either going to have to issue more shares, which would make the share price go down, or they're going to have to take on debt because although they do have a lot of cash, if they're burning through cash year in, year out, that cash is not going to last forever. The valuation on this company, it is rich, okay? So you're paying a 40 price to sales sales ratio, which very, very high. Maybe not crazy high, but it's pretty damn high. Now, in the first 6 months of 2020 compared to the first 6 months of 2019, the revenue was actually up 7%, which is pretty good, all things considered. For a 40 price to sales ratio, that is not that great. You should have a lot more growth. Also, there was less users on the app, actually. They started losing users, but that's also because less sports betting to be expected. This stock is looking really rich. I would not be buying at these levels. I think it's a tad bit overvalued. I think with a $22 billion market cap, you're kind of pricing in a lot. If regulations don't come, if sports get canceled, this thing is going to tank like a rock. So I would be very careful about buying at these prices specifically. So do I think Draftkings is an interesting stock? I do. I do think it's unique in the fact that it's a market leader in a very emerging high growth industry. However, the lack of profitability and the rich valuation really leaves me puzzled as to why you would buy this stock right this second. Obviously, you're paying for future growth, right? You're paying for the fact that this stock is going to be crazy in the future, but anything can happen. FanDuel could overtake them even though they have the lead at the moment. Anything could happen. It's hard to predict. If I was to start buying a position in this company, I would start buying a couple shares, nibble in, and slowly dollar cost average my way down. I don't think the stock is going to go too much higher, maybe in the short term, but I think the next year could be a little painful for it, so watch out. I actually do think that GAN, much better investment in my opinion, profitable and higher revenue growth. Something to keep in mind. If you want to watch that video, go ahead. I highly suggest you do. I like that stock a lot more than Draftkings personally. So with all that being said, let me know what your guys' thoughts on Draftkings stock are down in the comments below. Let me know what other stocks you want me to talk about. I would be down to talk about whatever and give my opinion on whatever. Thanks for watching. Love you.